Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time to join today's live stream. So I do have a pretty unique topic today that I'm going to be discussing. But as always, before I get started, I do want to mention my website, which is bponlinefitness.com. I will have the address linked to that website at the end of this stream to where you can check out my website. Of course, if you do have questions about anything or want the direct link to my website, I can send that to you. But my website, again, there's a ton of great information on there as it relates to online coaching. I keep it updated every week. I usually add a new blog post to the website every Friday, and then I also add the latest live streams on the homepage. So this live stream will be on that homepage as well. Um, Another thing I do want to mention is that I am offering 40% off online fitness coaching until next week. So this is the last week that I'm going to be offering that 40% off. So definitely reach out to me if you're interested in trying online coaching and you're ready to schedule a consultation. So just know that that offer is still available at least until the beginning of February. But we all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and talk about today's topic, which is training smart, balancing volume and intensity. So with this topic, we're gonna shift back into sort of discussing weightlifting. So when it comes to the different aspects of weightlifting, there's a few things to keep in mind. And volume and intensity is one of those things. So, what we're going to discuss today are these various different points. We're going to talk about the foundations of volume and intensity, the minimum effective dose of training, the science of progressive overload, identifying overtraining and overreaching, balancing high intensity and lower intensity, as well as periodization, structuring training for success. So, with all of these points here, all these points that I'm going to be discussing is very much related to how I structure a lot of the training methods as it relates to my coaching program. A lot of these are very structured in a similar way. There may be some differences, but a lot of these different points are some of the key things that I always, try to keep in mind when I'm, coaching my clients. So the first point here is the foundations of volume and intensity. So the definition of what volume and intensity is the total amount of work you do in a workout. So calculated as volume. So we're going to start with volume here. And it equals sets and reps times weight. So the key point of volume is primary driver of muscle growth, which is hypertrophy. Example, 3 sets of 10 reps at 100 pounds is 3,000 pounds of volume. So that's a simple way to sort of understand how much volume you're putting into your workouts. The level of effort or load in your training is often expressed as a percentage of your one rep max, or also the rating of perceived exertion. So basically, what the one rep max is how much you're lifting in that single rep, the max amount of weight that you could lift throughout that single rep. So you'll hear that a lot of times when you're, the topic of bodybuilding and things like that. One rep max kind of comes up in those sort of conversations. So when you hear that, it's about basically the max amount that you could lift in that one rep. So keep that in mind. The rating of perceived exertion, and keep in mind too, there's a lot of different terms when it comes to talking about these topics, and I am going to dissect them and give you a better understanding of these different topics, especially, 1RM, RPE, all of these different acronyms and things like that. I know it can get confusing, and that's what I want to clear up here today when we're talking about these topics as it relates to weightlifting and strength training. So, the rating of perceived exertion. This is something that I do for my clients every single day, or something that they, provide to me every day when they complete a workout. So the rating of perceived exertion is basically a scale. I would define it as a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult an exercise was. Like if you're performing a specific, set of exercises, It's basically a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, whether that exercise was basically a seamless exercise, if it was extremely easy, or it was extremely difficult. It took a lot of energy out of you. So that's basically what RPE is sort of when you're getting to the end of your workout, defining how difficult or how easy that workout was. If you have an Apple Watch or if you have Fitbit, I'm sure I believe that Fitbit kind of does a similar aspect too. But if you start tracking a specific workout, like for example, I'll track, my strength training workouts and I have it timed. And when I get to the end of my workout, I end that workout, it'll ask me how difficult that workout was. And I'll, log how difficult I thought that workout was. That's basically what the rating of perceived exertion is. It's just, really explaining like how difficult was this workout. So the key point, intensity determines the type of adaptations such as strength, high intensity, or endurance, low intensity. Intensity is sort of in that same sort of ballpark where we're talking about how, you know, difficult an exercise is. However, we're talking about how intense we're performing that specific workout. Is this workout primarily focused on strength? It's primarily going to be more of an high intensity based workout. We're talking about endurance, is going to be a little bit more low intensity based workout. So I hope that that was pretty understandable, to get things started out here with this topic. And again, I know, guys, that some of these points can kind of be just difficult to understand. And that's really what I want to, sort of pinpoint is to clear up these different terms that you hear thrown around when it comes to, the fitness space. So the next point here is the minimum effective dose of training. So this is basically the smallest amount of effort, time, or input required to produce a desired result. So this originates from medicine, but is widely applicable to fitness, productivity, and more. So efficiency, saving time and energy while achieving results, recovery, leaving room for proper rest and avoid overtraining, sustainability, easier to maintain a long-term habit. So basically what this is doing the bare minimum of training in your workout routine without, having to go into really extreme measures, I guess you could say. This is just, the minimum amount of effort it takes to still achieve your goal is basically what the minimum effective dose is. And I do want to sort of explain a little bit more into detail exactly what this is and give you an idea on how this is broken down based on different types of goals. So, for example, strength 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps at 75 to 85% of a 1 rep max, 2 to 3 times a week. That's the minimum effective dose of that specific training method for that typical or for that type of goal, I should say. Muscle growth, 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps at 65 to 75% of a 1 rep max per muscle group. Now, keep in mind the 1 rep max is basically how heavy you're lifting, how much, weight you can lift in a 1 rep, that max amount of weight you can lift, in other words. And again, I know these terms can be kind of confusing, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Fat loss, for example, again, we're talking about minimum effective dose, the minimum amount of effort that you would need to, get the results that you want. So fat loss would be roughly 15 to 20 minutes of HIIT training 3 times a week. Endurance would be 30 minutes of moderate cardio 3 to 5 times a week. 5 to 10 minutes daily of targeted stretching or mobility drills. Focus on problem areas. And I've got this repeated here, but what I'm trying to say is, as far as, stretching and things of that nature, 5 to 10 minutes daily of the targeting, stretching, or mobility drills is going to help with, of course, with flexibility, with the mobility aspect of things. Improving overall flexibility is what that 5 to 10 minutes daily means when we're talking about that. But just know that for each goal, there's a specific amount of effort that you would have to perform minimum in order to reach that goal. And this too doesn't take into consideration, keep in mind, this doesn't take into consideration your specific, lifestyle, your specific, whether whatever kind of limitations that you may have physically. So this is just giving you a good broad idea of what you would need to do, the minimum amount of effort you would need to perform in order to reach that specific goal. So breaking down the science of progressive overload. So this is something that I talk about many times, and I mention it to my clients very often as well. Breaking down the science of progressive overload. So again, what progressive overload means is gradually increasing the intensity of the specific amount of weights that you're lifting every, so many weeks, depending on how much you've adjusted to the existing weight that you've lifted. So, for example, let's say that I was lifting maybe 50 pounds for a few weeks of maybe a bicep curl. It's consistently, lifting those weights for a considerable amount of weeks. And then I get to a point to where, I feel like I need to increase the intensity. It's become easier for me to lift a weight. So what I'm going to likely do is gradually increase the intensity, whether it be adding 55 pounds, from there, and then lifting that weight for the next, desired amount of weeks, and then increasing that intensity, maybe adding 60 pounds. Keep in mind that it doesn't necessarily have to be weight in particular when we're talking about, the increase in intensity. It can also be increasing the amount of reps that you're performing, maybe shortening your rest periods and your sets that you're performing of your workout. Progressive overload is very flexible with what you can do with it. It's not just about gradually increasing weight. It can be done in multiple ways to, work for your specific situation or your specific goal in mind. So again, it's about gradually increasing stress on your body to stimulate adaptation. This is helping with aiding in muscle growth and, more muscle development, as well as strength. Drives muscle growth, strength, and endurance improvements. Again, you're going to increase resistance. You're going to add more weights to your lifts. You're going to also, if you want to, try a different method to still focus on progressive overload, you're going to add reps or sets to perform more volume at the same intensity. So again, keep in mind that we're talking about the volume and intensity. Intensity is about more about the weight that you're lifting, more about the how difficult that weight is lifting, whereas what we're talking about volume is the overall amount of work that we're putting into the workout. Improving technique, lifting with better form and efficiency is another thing to keep in mind. The more that you focus on your form, the more that you're going to be aware of, properly lifting that weight. And it may be harder because you're correcting your form. Reducing rest time, again, that's another thing that I mentioned. Shortening your rest can really make a difference, depending on your specific goal. I don't really recommend everybody to shorten their rest, particularly if they're focusing, on muscle gain, because a lot of times with muscle gain and hypertrophy, you do want to have a more, a longer rest period between your sets. However, if you're somebody who's focusing more on, different training, goals such as endurance, then it can be okay to sort of shorten that rest period and go into your next set of workouts. So just keep that in mind as well. So identifying overtraining and overreaching. So overtraining and overreaching are two different points that I'm going to discuss here. And I've talked a little bit about overtraining before in the past, but I've not really talked about overreaching. So I'm going to explain exactly what these two different concepts mean. So overtraining and overreaching are two distinct conditions that affect athletes and fitness enthusiasts. So recognizing the difference is key to preventing performance setbacks and ensuring long-term success. So starting with overreaching. So this is short-term fatigue caused by high training loads. Can be intentional and lead to performance gain when followed by recovery. So functional overreaching. Symptoms usually resolve with proper rest. So, overreaching, in other words, is kind of in the same vein as when we're talking about delayed onset muscle soreness, um, getting that soreness post workout, basically because your body's not used to that particular type of training. That's kind of where overreaching kind of plays into that sort of dynamic. Whereas when we're talking about overtraining, this is a little bit different. So, overtraining is a chronic condition resulting from prolonged excessive training and insufficient recovery. So, when we're talking about overreaching, overreaching can be fine. Overreaching again is just, being fatigued from your workout, a normal workout. And overreaching also means that you are also, functional overreaching is that you're really intentional and that you're focusing on recovery post workout. Again, going back to overtraining, this is about having, excessive training in your routine and insufficient amount of recovery, not letting your body rest and recover. This leads to a significant decline in performance and health and requires weeks or months of recovery. So overtraining can happen if you're just really, I mean, it's for a select amount of people that would actually get into this sort of, type of, training, whereas it's for people who are more focused on really their workout routine and they're just not mindful of how much that they're working out and how much, exertion they're putting on their body. So overtraining again can it won't happen to everybody, but if you're somebody who's just really into your workout routine and you're just wanting to get to the results, this is where you really need to be cautious about what you're doing because when you do too much, it can really, sort of hinder that growth and to, reaching your fitness goal. But again, it's for a certain amount of people. Not everybody is going to, go into overtraining because they're likely going to want to rest. So for somebody like me, whenever I got started, I was really trying to get the results fast. So I was consistently working out day by day. So because I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't know about overtraining. So have known that knowledge, of course, before I wouldn't do what I did because I was working out like 7 days a week because I just felt like, well, that's how I get results. But that's not necessarily the case. So just be aware of that when it comes to, really balancing your workout routine. So the next point here is I'm gonna, sort of dissect these a little bit more, discussing the key differences in overtraining and overreaching. So again, the duration for these two methods is different. When you're talking about overreaching, again, we're talking about short term, sort of fatigue. There's a temporary dip and then an improvement. Your recovery time for overreaching is, of course, going to be days to a week with rest. And then the symptoms are going to be mild to moderate. So again, overreaching is not a bad thing. It's just normal, sort of fatigue that you're going to have post workout and it's going to take just a few days for that, sort of fatigue to go away. And then when we're talking about overtraining, again, this is more long term that you're going to feel this. There's going to be a persistent decline in your performance if you continuously, overwork your body too much, and it can last between weeks to months in order to really fully recover from that overtraining. Symptoms can be severe with this as well. Again, you would have to really excessively, put your body through a lot in order to reach that sort of overtraining top phase. But just keep that in mind that these are the two differences here is that overreaching is focusing on just the, typical fatigue you would have from workout, whereas overtraining is you're not allowing your body to rest after extensive amount of workout that you're performing. So the next point here is how do you balance high and low intensity? So balancing high and low intensity training is essential for maximizing performance, avoiding burnout, and improving overall fitness. High intensity training. So let me explain the differences between these two different training methods. High intensity training focuses on maximum effort. This includes sprinting, heavy lifting, or HIIT training. So HIIT training, I've mentioned before, but the acronym for that means high intensity interval training. So that's what HIIT training is. Usually, HIIT training is sort of provided in basically a circuit or, really fast intervals, of course. But it can be done various different ways. But HIIT training is under that umbrella of high intensity training. So it improves strength, power, and anaerobic capacity and requires longer recovery periods. Again, this is really intense exercise, so it's going to take a lot of effort to perform. I've done HIIT training before, and it can be very exhausting if you're not used to that type of, you know, method of training. So low intensity training, it's performed at a steady to moderate pace. This is walking, light jogging, yoga, anything of that sort is going to be identified as a low intensity sort of training method. This is focused on building endurance, promotes active recovery, and supports mental well-being. So with a lot of my clients, what I have them do on their rest days is primarily focusing on active recovery. Active recovery is in that same umbrella as low intensity training. You're basically performing really light exercise to aid in, you don't want to do intensive exercise because, again, that kind of goes into overtraining. You want to let your body rest, but still stay lightly active in your routine to promote that recovery. So that's sort of understanding the difference between those two training methods. Again, if you're doing high intensity for a long period of time, that would be an example, if you're doing it really extensively, that would be an example of overtraining. So periodization, this is something else, and this is going to be the last point I'm going to discuss when it comes to this topic. Again, guys, if you have questions about anything I discuss here, feel free to reach out and let me know. So with this topic, this is something that I do for my clients as it relates to, their training, their training program, as well as, dependent on their specific goal that they're trying to accomplish in the program. So periodization is a systematic approach to organizing training into distinct phases to maximize performance and minimize fatigue. So again, this is where you're going through different phases in a sort of workout program or a workout routine. That's basically what periodization is in a nutshell. So it's a well structured plan enhancing progress, preventing plateaus, and reducing the risk of course, injury. I missed out on injury there. So that's basically what it is again, we're going through different phases. So, what is periodization? It's a training method that cycles through different phases, each with specific goals and intensities. It's designed to align with your fitness goals, competition dates, or recovery needs. This is something, for example, with my clients, usually every 4 weeks is when I go have them go through a different phase. Sometimes phases can be longer if I feel like they need to stay in that phase a little bit longer and still, get adjusted to those workouts, or, we can cut it short. Or, of course, we'll do the normal duration, which is normally 4 weeks, and then I'll go into a next phase, of workouts. Depending on where we're at, we may go up in a phase, increasing the intensity, or if we're kind of lacking in specific areas, we may lower the intensity and go back to, a lower sort of lower intensity workout routine to help with getting our body back to, adjusting to specific workouts. It's just dependent on, the results that my clients are getting is how I normally assign those phases and how that periodization works. So just know that this is basically phased, a phased workout routine and a systematic, approach to helping to aid in the process of reaching that goal. And is also very beneficial for preventing flat toes because you're going through different phases and your workouts are changing periodically. So components of periodization, there's different components to keep in mind. And there's three here that I'm going to mention. So a macro cycle is a long-term training plan. This is 6 to 12 months that outlines overall goals. That's typically, how long you'd stay in a training method and then change. A mesocycle is medium-term phases, which is what I usually do for clients, focusing on specific objectives such as strength, endurance, or recovery. And a microcycle is a short-term cycle where you would do 1 week of detailing daily workouts and rest days. So normally for my clients, I always do a mesocycle where I have a whole 4 weeks of them to perform a specific set of workouts, a specific set of training splits. Again, different training goals and different methods are going to be, for specific populations. But the best, component when it comes to, as far as having the proper cycle is the mesocycle, which is what I normally do. So just know that these are the different, sort of how often the sort of phases change throughout the workout. So for example, the 6 months, 6 to 12 months, you would stay in that phase for that amount of months. And then when we're talking about mesocycle, you're staying within that phase between 4 to 8 weeks. So that's basically what that means is that you're staying within a specific workout routine for that duration of time. So the types of periodization, and again, this will be the last sort of topic that I'm discussing, but I wanted to sort of expand a little bit further on periodization because I know it can kind of be confusing to understand. So, linear periodization is gradual progression or intensity and reduction in volume, ideal for beginners or general fitness goals. Undulating periodization is frequent changes in intensity and volume within a week or a cycle. So it keeps workouts varied and prevents plateaus. And a block periodization focuses on one primary goal per mesocycle, hypertrophy, strength, power, common for advanced athletes with specific performance goals. So usually what I do with clients is the undulating periodization. Now the intent, of course, the workouts don't change that often. They do change every 4 weeks, but they'll stay in that specific amount of workouts for that duration of time. And then, of course, their workout will change. Whereas again, like when we're talking about linear, we're focusing on really small and minor changes in that workout routine. And then block periodization is focusing primarily on, a specific goal that we're, really trying to dial in on. And this is more for the advanced, athletes and things of that nature. So keep this in mind that there's different ways that periodization works. Alrighty, guys. So thank you for taking the time to watch this live stream. I know that I kind of went into detail on different topics, but I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. You can check out my website again. It's bponlinefitness.com. I've got it on screen here. I also have my phone number and email address if you want to reach out to me there as well. Again, guys, I will have another live stream next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I'll be discussing another topic. I'm going to go back into talking about nutrition in this next live stream, so definitely watch out for that. I'll have the event posted pretty soon. If you guys really enjoy these streams, please share them so that I can get the word out and really get, more exposure on these specific topics as it relates to weightlifting, as it relates to, nutrition and recovery. I really want to get these topics out, and these are available for anybody to view and to, sort of get information, without having to try to jump into, purchasing something. This is something that I want to show all that I have to offer and give you guys an overview of so many different topics and so many things that you may not be aware of when it comes to fitness, nutrition, and recovery. So, with all that being said, guys, thank you for taking the time to watch this live stream. Again, I will have another live stream next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. But once again, thank you guys, and I will see you in the next live stream.